My name is Sarah Millie, and I did my research project for graphic design perspectives on user experience and user interface design in the modern healthcare industry. I chose to do my topic on healthcare because I've always had a greater interest in science and healthcare programs. And since I've been in the VCD program, I've had an interest in how design plays a role in either making print copy easily readable for patients or how those kind of technology systems are impacting the organizations as a whole. I've noticed such a change in my experience with, hospitals and care and setting up appointments, and just my overall experience of going to the doctor's office, how it's changed with the addition of technology. So, for example, going to an orthopedic office, the second that you get in the office, you rate your pain on an iPad, and that's a specific system that the hospitals are using. And by the time your doctor sees you, he has a full kind of mock-up of what's going on with you and the right questions to ask. And then as he's dealing with you, has an iPad in front of him, putting information into a system as well. So this is just very interesting to me because I wondered, are designers working to make these systems a little more efficient, or what are the positives and negatives of that change within the industry? Over the past year that I've been at Kent, I've learned a lot. I've tried to teach myself a lot about user experience and user interface, and I thought this research paper would be a good opportunity for me to kind of dive a little bit deeper into both topics and kind of see how they're similar and how they differ, and how they help, systems like really complex healthcare programs, how do they make those programs a little bit easier and more organized. So this paper is divided in 3 sections. The first section is covering user experience and user interface design, and also the importance of human-centered design. So we'll kind of talk about some research approaches that go into designing for the healthcare industry. The second is talking about what specifically goes into designing apps and software for the healthcare industry. So what specific traits and sort of regulations go into designing these programs. And the third section, we're going to talk about the negative aspects of the current healthcare software and designs that are out there. So negative qualities to them, what makes them too complicated, and what designers are kind of aiming at fixing. So to start from the beginning, kind of an overview of user experience and user interface design. So when I started this project, I honestly kind of would get the two confused for one another, and doing this project really helped me to kind of put them in 2 separate categories, but understand how they are related to one another. So in a very broad sense, user experience is the overall experience a person has when they're using a product, such as a website, software, applications, things like that, and how easy is it for them to use that. So in a sense, it's difficult, being a design student who uses technology and these applications every day, but these, especially in healthcare, these apps and software have to be used by people who maybe don't know quite as much about technology. So how easy is it for them to, and there's a lot of, research that goes into that, kind of prototyping and seeing, what works well for some people and not others. So in conjunction with user experience, user interface is the means by which the user and the computer react. So whatever system or software that person is using, how is that interaction working, and is, what's visible on the screen easy for them to understand? So I tend to think of user interface as kind of the look and feel, the face of that page. So, are the icons easy to read? Is the page navigation around the site easy to kind of comprehend the way that, the type and the color schemes are working? And, paired with these things, always is human-centered design. So human-centered design is really important to design these pages and software efficiently, because really at the heart of a successful website or app is something that, people know how to use. And there's only one way to figure out what people's preferences are, and that's by watching them actually use those sites or asking them what they would like to see in those apps. So really, this is done by observational research or prototyping. So actually mocking up the site and having people from different demographics and backgrounds testing that site and kind of listening to their feedback and understanding what areas work well and what areas don't. And this also works with, just testing the site to see what maybe shortcomings it has. So does it work when there's no Wi-Fi, or things like that in healthcare are pretty important, especially if you're dealing with remote care and things like that. So another really important aspect to think about when looking at human-centered design and design thinking is kind of taking this empathetic approach towards the user. So really understanding what things they actually need and what things might be extra that would complicate the page or confuse the user. So I think one thing to really consider is not adding so many extra features and functions. So sometimes less can be more, especially when you have complicated information like health records and symptoms and pain ratings and medications all kind of housed in the same area. When you add a lot of those extra amenities in there, I think sometimes it can actually help, not really help, but actually cause the page to be more complicated. Typically, healthcare research is costly and it takes a long time to gather all of the statistics and findings from that research. So, although it does take this time and money to go through the process, in the long run, it ends up being very lucrative as far as creating financial success for companies or organizations like healthcare, because really they're able to weed through what positive aspects to keep and what negative things to kind of get rid of. So it ends up being financially better because they don't have to create a whole system and then realize it has all these flaws. So overall, the design thinking approach and human-centered design approach of really thinking about these patients and doctors empathetically, in the long run, tends to make a better system and tends to kind of reverse the process of having to go back and revise a lot of aspects. So in the second section, we're going to talk about design-centered systems within healthcare that already exist and some of the functions that come along with them. So one of the topics we'll talk about first is kind of a newer facet of healthcare that has come along with the rise of technology, and that is remote care. So in areas where it's not as easy for patients to see their doctors face to face, they're now able to kind of converse with their doctor or get a diagnosis through their computer, through certain softwares or websites. So, imagine maybe someone who doesn't use a computer a lot or an older person who maybe doesn't own a computer. These kinds of things need to be very easy for them to use. So, face-to-face monitoring with their doctor or simple maneuverability around the app or website that this remote care is housed on are all really important things to consider.